My name is Jake Turner, and until recently I thought I had it all. I was 38, a successful architect living in a quiet neighborhood in Charlotte, North Carolina, with my beautiful wife Sarah and our 7-month-old daughter Lily. I had worked hard for everything we had: our cozy home, the cars parked in the driveway, and the vacations we took every year to places that felt like paradise. Life was simple, or so I thought. Sarah was everything I could have asked for: beautiful, smart, and driven. She worked as a data analyst at a tech company that had recently made waves in the city, bringing a spark of innovation wherever it went. We had met at a conference a few years back, and after a whirlwind romance, we married. Our lives were perfect, or at least, that's how it looked to everyone else. The first few months after Lily's birth were chaotic, as any new parent would know. The constant crying, the 3 a.m. feedings, the never-ending diapers, it was all exhausting. But even in the chaos, there was something magical about it. Watching Lily grow, her little smiles when I came home from work, or when I held her during bath time, it made everything worthwhile. I loved the life we had built together. I loved my family. But something had changed recently. Sarah, my sweet Sarah, seemed different. She was distant, always glued to her phone, smiling at something I couldn't see. At first, I thought maybe it was just the stress of transitioning back to work after her maternity leave. But as the weeks went by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to ignore it. I told myself that she was probably just reconnecting with old friends from work, getting back into the swing of things. I tried to be understanding, not wanting to add any pressure, especially with everything going on. But every time I asked her what was so funny, what was keeping her so captivated, she'd give me vague responses, something about group chats at work or funny memes. I wanted to believe her, I needed to. But I couldn't stop wondering if I was missing something. It was a Tuesday in late March when everything changed. I met up with Ben, my best friend since college, for lunch. We'd been getting together every couple of weeks at a local Mexican restaurant halfway between our offices. Ben was an outgoing guy, always the life of the party, and a little more carefree than I was. We were opposites in many ways, but we always clicked. That day, though, Ben seemed off. He wasn't his usual talkative self, and he kept fidgeting with his napkin instead of eating. His eyes avoided mine, and I could sense something was wrong. I tried to lighten the mood, joking that he looked like he'd seen a ghost, but his face stayed serious. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of awkward silence, he put his fork down, took a deep breath, and looked me straight in the eye. "Jake," he said, his voice low, "I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it." Immediately, my stomach dropped. I knew something was wrong. The alarm bells went off in my head. My heart started to race. "What happened?" I asked, already fearing the worst. Ben hesitated for a moment, pulling out his phone. He unlocked it and then, without another word, turned the screen toward me. I stared at the photo, my blood running cold. It was Sarah, sitting at a table in a high-end restaurant in downtown Charlotte. She was smiling, leaning forward, clearly enjoying herself. But what struck me wasn't just the smile. It was the man sitting next to her. I didn't recognize him, but I could tell by the way they were sitting that they were close. His hand was resting on hers, a gesture so intimate that it made my blood boil. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice hoarse. My hands started to tremble as I took in the image, the reality of what I was seeing sinking in. Ben sighed deeply, almost as if he'd been holding this in for a while. "Carla," he said, referring to his cousin who worked as a hostess at that restaurant. "She sent me this last night. She's seen Sarah there with that guy several times over the past few weeks. Always at lunch, always in the same spot, always like that." My world stopped spinning. I tried to process what I was seeing, the gut punch of betrayal creeping in. I took Ben's phone, zooming in on the image to memorize every detail. The timestamp on the photo read 1:20 p.m. 2 days ago, Thursday. I remembered that day clearly. Sarah had told me she was meeting up with some old coworkers before returning to the office, catching up on work before getting back to the grind. I had stayed home with Lily, taking care of our baby while Sarah was out. But now it was clear. She wasn't where she said she was. "Who is this guy?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ben shook his head. Carla doesn't know his name, but she said he always pays with a corporate card. He must be from Sarah's company. A sick feeling washed over me. My mind was racing. I didn't know what to do. I need to go, I said, barely able to stand up. I tossed enough cash on the table to cover our meal and hurried out of the restaurant, leaving Ben behind, his voice calling after me, trying to stop me from doing something rash. I couldn't think. I just needed answers. As I drove home, my heart pounded in my chest, my thoughts racing faster than I could process them. The images kept flashing in my mind. Sarah. The man. The hand on hers. When I pulled into the driveway, it was 2 p.m. I'd canceled all my meetings for the afternoon, sending a vague email about a family emergency. Technically, it wasn't a lie. My family was falling apart, right in front of me, and I didn't know how to stop it. I walked into the house, feeling the weight of the moment press down on me. It was eerily quiet, except for the faint sound of the TV coming from the living room. I could hear Lily's soft breathing from her stroller. Sarah was there, sitting on the couch in sweats, her hair in a messy bun, looking like the picture of exhaustion. She was scrolling through her phone, laughing quietly at something on the screen. When she looked up and saw me, she seemed genuinely surprised. Jake? What are you doing here? I thought you had meetings until 5? I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, frozen for a moment, staring at her, trying to reconcile the woman in front of me with the woman in that photo. How could she look so normal, so innocent when everything I thought I knew was crumbling? I pulled out my phone and opened the photo Ben had shown me. Without a word, I dropped the phone on the coffee table, screen facing up. Why don't you tell me who he is? I asked, my voice unnervingly calm. Sarah looked at the phone, and I saw the exact moment she realized what was happening. Her face drained of color. Her eyes widened, and her hands started to tremble. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then she spoke, but I could already hear the lies. I can explain. Those words. The ones every cheater says. I could feel my blood boil, but I remained calm. Explain. I'm waiting. My heart was breaking, but I couldn't show it. I needed answers, the truth. No more lies. Sarah tried to explain, her voice shaky, but nothing she said made sense. Jake, it's not what you think, she stammered, standing up from the couch and moving closer to me. James, he's just a coworker. We've been talking, catching up on work stuff. It's nothing more than that. I could see the desperation in her eyes, but I wasn't buying it. The photo didn't lie. The way she was sitting, the way their bodies were so close, the intimacy in that simple touch, there was more to this than she was admitting. A coworker? I scoffed, trying to hold my composure. A coworker who touches your hand at a fancy restaurant, and you've been meeting him for weeks? You've been lying to me, Sarah. I can see it in the photos. You've been sneaking around behind my back. She paused, looking down at her feet. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I just felt so alone, Jake. You were so focused on the baby, on being the perfect dad. I felt invisible. James, he listened to me. He made me feel like I was still me, not just mom. Her words were like a punch to the gut. I was doing everything I could, working hard to provide for us, taking care of Lily, trying to build a future. And this was how she repaid me? By turning to another man for attention? Are you serious? I asked, my voice growing cold. I was focused on being a dad because that's what we chose, Sarah. Our son is our priority. But you chose to have lunches with him instead of talking to me. You didn't come to me for support. You chose to hide it all. She stepped toward me, hands outstretched, pleading. Jake, please, it's not what you think. Nothing happened between us. It's just lunch. Just a few conversations. I swear, nothing physical happened. I couldn't listen to her anymore. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the other pictures Ben had sent me. Picture after picture of Sarah and James, always the same. Smiling, laughing, sitting too close, looking like they were more than just colleagues. My anger flared. How many times had she lied to my face while I was at home taking care of our newborn? How many times had she pretended everything was fine while sneaking around? How many times, Sarah? I demanded. How many times did you look me in the eye, kiss me, sleep in our bed, and then go meet him? How long have you been planning this behind my back? Sarah was crying now, her face buried in her hands, the weight of everything she had done crashing down on her. I felt so alone, Jake. I needed someone to talk to, someone who could make me feel alive again. Alive? I repeated, almost laughing bitterly. You think sneaking around with another man makes you feel alive? You've ruined everything, Sarah. Our family, our trust, our future. I took a deep breath, trying to control the storm inside me. I'm leaving, I said, my voice shaking with fury. I'm going to stay at my mom's for a few days. I need space to think. As I turned to leave, Sarah stepped toward me, her voice breaking. Jake, don't take Lily. Please. Don't take her from me. I paused, looking at our daughter, peacefully sleeping in her stroller. It hurt to even think about taking her away from her mother, but I knew I couldn't leave Lily in a house full of lies. I'm not taking her now, I said, my voice softening just for a moment. But don't think this is over. I'll be back for her. With that, I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving Sarah behind, sobbing on the couch. As I drove to my mom's house, my mind was a whirlwind. I couldn't stop thinking about everything Sarah had said, everything she had done. Was I so focused on being a good dad that I missed the signs? Had I been so blind to what was happening right under my nose? The next few days were a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, playing over every moment with Sarah, every conversation, every glance. It all felt like a lie. I tried to hold it together for Lily, but inside, I was falling apart. I knew I needed to take action. I couldn't just sit back and let this continue. So, I did something I never thought I would have to do. I contacted a divorce attorney. The lawyer, a man named Robert, was calm and professional as he listened to the details of my situation. He reviewed the photos Ben had sent me, nodding as he examined them. You've got a strong case, Jake, he said. Emotional infidelity is hard to prove, but this evidence, it's compelling. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How had everything spiraled out of control so quickly? Sarah had destroyed everything we had, and now it seemed like the only option was to move forward with the divorce. But what about Lily? What about our family? Robert's advice was clear. I needed more evidence. So, I hired a data recovery specialist to dig into Sarah's iCloud. What he found was devastating. Messages between Sarah and James, starting innocently enough, quickly escalated to something more. The tone of their conversations shifted from professional to personal, and soon, Sarah was confiding in James about how she felt trapped in her marriage. Then I found the message that left no room for doubt. I'm trapped, James. Kevin's a good man, but he's not you. I need to wait for the right moment. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Sarah wasn't just emotionally involved with James, she was planning to leave me. She'd been waiting for the right moment to get out. This changed everything. I knew I had to fight for my daughter, for my family. And I wasn't going to let Sarah get away with this. The days after I uncovered the messages were some of the darkest of my life. Sarah's betrayal wasn't just an emotional affair. It was the beginning of her plans to leave me and, possibly, take Lily with her. I couldn't just sit back and let her destroy our family. Lily deserved better than this. She deserved to grow up in a home where love, honesty, and trust were the foundation. I consulted with Robert again. He reviewed the messages from Sarah and James, his expression grim. This changes everything, Jake, he said. The messages show intent, premeditation. That's critical for your case. He paused before adding, but we need to move fast. If you're serious about custody, we'll need more than just these texts. We'll need a solid paper trail. I followed Robert's advice. I went through the joint bank accounts, the credit card statements, everything. I found more evidence, hidden purchases, extravagant meals at high-end restaurants, even lingerie from a boutique that I knew Sarah had never bought for me. It was clear now, Sarah hadn't just been sneaking around with James, she had been living a double life, hiding her true intentions from me. But the real twist came when Robert, doing his due diligence, started investigating James. What we found was even more shocking. James wasn't just a single man. He was married with 2 kids. His wife, Melissa, had no idea what her husband had been doing during his lunch hours. I was in shock. Not only had Sarah been betraying me, but she had been doing it with a married man. The weight of everything hit me hard, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. I couldn't let Sarah get away with this, and I couldn't let her continue to deceive everyone around her. After careful consideration, I made a decision. I contacted Melissa. She deserved to know the truth just like I did. I couldn't let her live in the dark, unknowingly married to a man who had been having an affair with my wife. I met Melissa at a cafe, a neutral place where we could talk. She was petite, with dark hair and kind eyes, but as soon as I showed her the photos, her face turned red. She didn't cry in front of me, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. "Thank you for telling me," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the obvious pain. Melissa didn't waste any time. That night, she confronted James. The argument was loud enough for the neighbors to hear, and I could imagine the chaos in their home. But Melissa wasn't done yet. As a teacher, she was meticulous, organized, and she knew exactly what to do. She gathered all the evidence I had, photos, bank statements, messages, and sent a formal email to the HR department at the tech company where both Sarah and James worked. The email detailed the inappropriate relationship between 2 employees, how they used company time for personal meetings, and the possible violations of company policies. It didn't take long for the company to take action. Within a week, both James and Sarah were called in for separate HR meetings. The company had a strict no relationships policy, especially among coworkers, and worse for James, he was a senior supervisor. This created a massive conflict of interest, and his actions were a violation of the company's code of conduct. James was fired after an internal investigation revealed that he had used corporate cards to pay for multiple lunches with Sarah, falsely categorizing them as team-building meetings. As for Sarah, she was slapped with a formal written warning and placed on a 90-day probation period. The company made it clear that any further violations would result in immediate termination. But that wasn't the worst part for Sarah. The real battle was yet to come. The divorce proceedings moved forward quickly. I moved into a temporary apartment, and I filed for primary custody of Lily. Sarah fought back, claiming that she was the one who had spent the first 6 months of Lily's life caring for her, and that she had a bond with our daughter that couldn't be broken. But Robert was relentless in presenting the evidence. The messages between Sarah and James, her secret lunch dates, the unexplained expenses, the lies, it all painted a clear picture of her priorities. The custody hearing was set, and I braced myself for the worst. The judge was a woman named Harriet Morrison, a no-nonsense type who had a reputation for being tough but fair. I had prepared myself for this moment, knowing it would be the fight of my life. When the day arrived, I walked into the courtroom with Robert by my side. I took my seat, heart pounding, trying to stay calm. Sarah was already there, looking disheveled, her eyes red from crying. Her lawyer was sitting beside her, but I could tell she wasn't prepared for what was coming. The judge listened to both sides carefully, reviewing all the evidence. She didn't look at me with sympathy, and she didn't look at Sarah with pity. She was impartial, focused on what mattered, the well-being of our daughter. After what felt like an eternity, Judge Morrison spoke. "Mrs. Turner, you placed an extramarital relationship above your responsibilities to your newborn daughter. The evidence shows a clear pattern of deception, dishonesty, and disrespect, not only to your marriage, but to the family you helped create." She paused for a moment, her eyes narrowing as she looked directly at Sarah. "I have no choice but to grant primary custody to Mr. Turner. Mrs. Turner, you will have supervised visits with your daughter on alternating weekends until you demonstrate emotional stability and proper commitment." I sat there, stunned. It was over. I had won. I had done what I needed to do to protect my daughter and ensure that she would grow up in a safe, loving environment. Sarah left the courtroom in tears, and I watched her go, feeling nothing but a cold emptiness. She had made her choice. I had made mine. But the battle wasn't over yet. There were still a few more steps to take before things would finally settle. The weeks that followed the custody hearing were a blur. Sarah moved out of the house, and with her went the life we had once shared, the life I had worked so hard to build. The house felt too big without her, too quiet. Lily, thankfully, seemed too young to fully understand the magnitude of what was happening, but I could see the confusion in her eyes whenever Sarah came to visit. The transition was hard on both of us, but I knew I had to stay strong. For her. For me. At first, the reality of it all hit me in waves. I felt the weight of the divorce, the pain of betrayal, and the exhaustion of being a single parent. Every day was a struggle. There were days when I would sit in the living room, after putting Lily to bed, and just stare at the walls, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. But eventually, I realized that feeling sorry for myself wouldn't help anyone. Not me, not Lily. I made a decision. I was going to rebuild. From scratch. Piece by piece. Day by day. It wasn't easy. Some nights, after a long day of work, I would look at Lily sleeping peacefully in her crib and wonder if I was doing enough. Was I being the best dad I could be? I would question everything. The way I was handling the divorce, my decision to fight for custody, the sacrifices I had to make for work and personal life. But with every new challenge, I grew stronger. And with every new hurdle, I became more determined to give Lily the best life possible. I moved into a smaller apartment, a cozy 2-bedroom place that was far from the house we had shared with Sarah, but it was ours. It was simple, but it was mine, and most importantly, it was where Lily and I could start fresh. The space wasn't much, but it felt like a new beginning. I focused on creating a routine, one that centered around Lily, her needs, and my own growth as a single dad. Every morning, I'd take her to the park and we'd play together. I made sure to spend every possible moment with her, teaching her to walk, talking to her, reading her books. Every night, we'd cuddle up together on the couch, watching her favorite cartoons before bed. And slowly, the pieces started to fall into place. It wasn't just Lily that I was learning to care for, it was also myself. I had been so consumed with everything Sarah had put me through, with the anger and the betrayal, that I had neglected my own well-being. I started exercising more, taking care of my body, and even picking up old hobbies I had abandoned over the years. I joined a local gym, went on long runs in the morning, and in the evenings, spent time reading books or catching up with friends who had supported me through everything. It felt good to reconnect with myself. Then one day, something unexpected happened. I met Sophie. It was a typical Saturday afternoon. I had taken Lily to the park, and while she was off playing with some other kids, I sat on a bench nearby, reading a book. I hadn't even noticed her approach until she sat down next to me, a friendly smile on her face. "Hi there," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "Mind if I sit here?" I looked up, surprised by her sudden appearance, but I smiled back. Of course, it's a free bench. We began talking, and before long, I found myself laughing at her jokes, intrigued by her stories. Sophie was a preschool teacher, and we hit it off immediately. There was a calm about her that was different from anyone I had met in a long time. She was patient, kind, and had a natural way with children. She even struck up a conversation with Lily, who took to her immediately. Watching Sophie interact with my daughter, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't realized I was missing. We began seeing each other casually. There was no rush. Neither of us wanted to jump into anything too quickly. I was still processing everything that had happened with Sarah, and Sophie understood that. She was kind and patient, and every time we spent time together, I felt like I was starting to heal. Slowly, I began to open up to her, sharing bits and pieces of my past, of the mess that had been my marriage, and of how much I wanted to give Lily a better future. Months passed, and our relationship grew stronger. Sophie met Lily after a few months of dating, and it was clear from the way Lily lit up when she saw her that they were already forming a bond. Sophie didn't try to replace Sarah. She never would. But she was there, and she was a kind, loving presence in both our lives. We built something slow, steady, and real, a foundation of trust and mutual respect. Meanwhile, Sarah's life wasn't going the way she had hoped. She had lost her job at the tech company after the HR investigation, and she was struggling to find work elsewhere. The reality of her actions, the job loss, the fallout from the affair, the loss of custody, had hit her harder than she had anticipated. She tried to reach out to me a few times, asking for forgiveness, pleading for a second chance. But I couldn't go back to that life. Not after everything. Every time she tried to contact me, I was polite but firm in my responses. I wish you the best, Sarah, I would say. But what you did can't be undone. You made your choices, and now we have to live with the consequences. It wasn't easy. I wanted to believe that people could change, but Sarah's betrayal ran deep. I couldn't risk exposing Lily to that kind of behavior again. A year after everything had fallen apart, things started to feel like they were finally settling into place. I had found a new rhythm, a new purpose, and a new sense of peace. I wasn't the same person I was before, naive and trusting. But I was stronger. I was a better father, a better man. And most importantly, I was building a future I could be proud of. That night, as I put Lily to bed, she looked up at me with her big, brown eyes and asked, "Daddy, why doesn't Mommy live here?" I took a deep breath, knowing the time had come to explain things. Sometimes, son, people make choices that hurt others. Your mommy made some choices that hurt me. But that doesn't mean she doesn't love you. She just made mistakes. And adults make mistakes too. Lily seemed to think about it for a moment before asking, "Did you make mistakes, Daddy?" I smiled, brushing her hair out of her face. "Yes, I did. I still do. But I always try to learn from them. And I always try to do my best for you." Lily smiled back at me, content with my answer. As I kissed her goodnight and turned off the light, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I had made it through the storm. And while I couldn't undo the past, I could control the future. I was rebuilding it brick by brick, and this time I was doing it right. 2 years had passed since that fateful day when everything changed. The pain of betrayal, the whirlwind of emotions, the sleepless nights, it all felt like a distant memory now. But the scars remained, hidden beneath the surface, reminders of a life that had fallen apart and slowly been rebuilt from the ground up. I had spent those years focusing on Lily, on being the best father I could be. I was no longer the man who had been blind to the cracks in his marriage. I had learned hard lessons, lessons that had reshaped who I was and how I saw the world. I had learned to trust my instincts, to not ignore the signs when something felt off. And most importantly, I had learned to love and take care of myself. Lily, now 3 years old, was growing into an inquisitive, playful child. She loved spending time at the park, running around with other kids, her laughter echoing in the air. She had her own personality now, strong-willed and independent, but also kind-hearted, always looking out for those around her. It was clear she had inherited the best parts of both me and Sarah, and I was doing everything I could to nurture that. Sophie and I had grown closer over the past year, and our relationship had developed into something real, something solid. She was patient, understanding, and kind. Sophie had become a constant in our lives, and watching her interact with Lily filled me with a sense of peace I hadn't known I needed. They weren't mother and daughter, but the bond they shared was unmistakable. Sophie respected my boundaries, never trying to take Sarah's place, but she had found her own place in our little family. It was a relationship built on trust, and that was something I hadn't realized I was craving until I had it again. One evening, as I sat on the couch, watching Lily play with her toys, Sophie sat down beside me, her smile gentle and understanding. "Jake," she began softly, "I know it hasn't been easy for you. And I know that what you went through with Sarah still weighs on you, but I want you to know that I'm here. For Lily. And I'm in this for the long haul." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that. The past had shaped me, yes, but it didn't define me. And Sophie was the future I had been searching for. I had spent so much time focusing on what I'd lost that I hadn't seen the possibility of what I could gain. What we could build together. "I know," I said, turning to face her. "I know, and I'm grateful for you. For both of you." Lily looked up from her toys, her big brown eyes wide. "Grateful for what, Daddy?" I chuckled softly, pulling her onto my lap. "Grateful for my 2 favorite girls." Sophie smiled, and I could see the future in her eyes. It wasn't just about moving on from the past. It was about creating something new, something beautiful, from everything we had learned and grown through. Lily's laughter filled the room again, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of peace. We had come so far, Sophie, Lily, and I, and the road ahead was full of possibility. I no longer worried about what could have been. I knew that what mattered now was what we were building day by day, together. Later that evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at me with that same curious expression she always had. "Daddy, are we a family?" I paused, thinking for a moment, before answering with complete certainty. "Yes, sweetheart. We are." I kissed her goodnight, smoothing her hair as she drifted off to sleep, and stepped out of her room, my heart full. The family I had fought so hard for was right here, right in front of me. And this time, there was no more fear, no more doubt. There was only the future, one I would fight for, protect, and love every day. Sophie joined me on the porch later that night. We sat together, watching the stars twinkle in the sky above us. It was a peaceful night, one that felt like the calm after a storm. Sophie took my hand in hers, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to truly relax. "We've got this, Jake," she said, her voice soft but confident. "We're building something real." I squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of her words settle deep in my chest. "Yeah," I said, looking up at the stars. "We really are." And for the first time in a long time, I felt like everything was exactly as it should be.